right? In branding, we talk about being different. And the Prophet ﷺ always talked about being different. Be different from the Jews and the Christians. Grow your beard, do this and that, and different things that the Prophet ﷺ said. Be different from them. Even like fasting, Ashura was also something that the Prophet ﷺ said. You do it different. And in branding, we talk about this whole idea about being different from others who are there in the market. It helps you stick out. It helps you really stand out from the rest of them. And to be honest, Muslims really stand out from the rest of the people in the world. Right?
True.
That's a very small thing from the lessons from the life of the Prophet ﷺ we could take and apply, and it's so powerful that it makes us unique and a community that people will really see. Okay, they notice what we do.
What is branding? Should you even care about branding? And if you should, how can you actually develop your own brand? These are what we'll be discussing in this episode with Brother Muhammed Faraz, co-founder and chief brand officer at Outta the Box, a consultancy specialized in brand strategy and brand identity. Brother Faraz obtained a bachelor's degree in architecture and was on the pathway towards pursuing a professional career in architecture before discovering his passion and venturing into the world of branding. He is now a brand architect, being a level C certified brand specialist. And he co-founded Outta the Box, the brand consultants who are responsible for establishing the brand identity for various businesses and Islamic organizations such as An-Nadaa Foundation, Ink of Faith, Revivers, Quraany, and last but not least, the Barakah Effect. Yes, the Barakah Effect. It was in fact Faraz's team all along who had been working with us behind the scenes to help us establish our overall brand identity and design our logo, which you are seeing right here, walhamdulillah. And so in this episode, we'll go through Faraz's own story of self-discovery towards finding purpose in his work and how he discovered his calling in the field of branding. We explore the basics of branding, how to best describe branding. Is a brand and a logo the same thing? And we also discuss why bother even building a brand in the first place. And finally, we find out how we can be intentional and clear about our own personal brand. How we can capitalize on branding principles and use it to our advantage in any of our endeavors, whether it be in our businesses, our careers, establishing educational institutions, or even dawah organizations. By the end of the episode, our hopes is that you will never see branding in the same way again, as we did experience ourselves after this conversation. Welcome to the Barakah Effect podcast. If you find value in this episode, why don't you do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button down below. And while you're at it, why don't you share this episode with others and join us in our journey to inspire communities of high achievers striving for continuous growth and excellence in dunya and hereafter. This is episode 57, How to Build Your Brand and Why It Matters, with Muhammed Faraz.
ولو أن أهل القرى آمنوا واتقوا لفتحنا عليهم بركات من السماء والأرض.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. MashaAllah, today we have a very special guest who have been with us from the very beginning of the Barakah Effect journey. I would say even an extension of our team somewhat. Who is Brother Faraz from Outta the Box. Ahlan wa sahlan, akhi.
Barakallah for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Barakallah feek. So Faraz here is one of the duo behind Outta the Box. And the story goes, when we started the Barakah Effect, we were just 5 clueless guys knowing what we wanted to do, but somewhat a bit unclear on what is the most impactful way to go about it. So, things about our vision, our aims, our identity. And that was where Brother Faraz and Brother Ahmad came in from Outta the Box, came to the picture with the amazing work as our brand consultant, mashallah. So what have you been keeping you busy lately?
Maybe just to share some context stories, for
Yeah.
the benefit of listeners. So our intention was like, okay, we after wrestling about the idea what we should call this, then finally we settled with the name, the Barakah Effect. It's like, okay, what do we want to look like? So our core intention to engage Faraz was like, give us a logo, man. And then
That was the first thing, right?
yeah, give us a logo.
We need a logo.
Right.
Not knowing there is so many layers behind this.
Right.
I thought it was
kind of open.
2-3 hours job, right? But subhanallah.
Yeah, so that opened the can of worms into the world of branding. MashaAllah.
Mashallah.
That's what we want to talk about today, inshallah.
Yes, mashallah. Yeah, so Brother Faraz, what have you been passionate about lately? What have you been keeping busy with?
I believe, for me, alhamdulillah, and Jazakallah khair for the nice introduction. It was really, a humble experience working with you guys and, working on Barakah Effect's, brand. I think that passion goes back to some of the things you mentioned that, you all came together to do something in order to benefit the ummah. And I believe, personally, my passion has always been that ever since I started, being more conscious about the deen and conscious about, who I am and why I'm here on earth. And that's what drives me forward, every time of the way. And, no matter what I'm doing right now, like I'm doing branding right now. At one point I had, a different background, and it really is for that cause itself. I want to always return back to the point where how can I use my skills, the things that I do, and, be it branding, be it anything else, to, revert it back to benefiting the ummah and, serving Islam and Allah Azza wa Jalla through that.
MashaAllah. So that's basically the big why, right? So other than that, they are all the means of getting to your destination. MashaAllah. We talk about a lot of the big why in our podcast, and I just want to rewind back when I first actually met Faraz. If I can recall correctly, this was some years ago when I used to have some classes at An-Nadaa Institute, and I used to find Faraz sitting in the library doing some creative work for the institute. Was that correct, Faraz? Do I recall it correctly?
I think we met before that, but I can't remember.
Actually, even before that, yeah.
Because I think we must have met in the conferences, and then we met at I'm saying Barakah Effect. We met at An-Nadaa Institute, and then we started having conversation and whatnot, and that's how we got to know each other. We used to see each other like every day.
Yeah, mashallah.
For the classes.
Mashallah. And one thing that I could still not get my head around or wrap my head around to this very day was that at that time you were studying and living in Putrajaya, if I'm not mistaken, right? Cyberjaya. Yeah, okay. And An-Nawawi was in Kota Damansara. And mind you, this was when I had my classes, this was at night. And when I asked Brother Faraz, how did you get here? He used to say he used to travel by bus. MashaAllah.
Oh, MashaAllah.
And someone who lives in KL knows how much of a distance of Cyberjaya and Kota Damansara is. It's just like another state in itself. To me, at least.
Yeah, it must be like at least like 30, 40 kilometers or something like that, right?
Yeah. MashaAllah.
40 minutes to 1 hour, right?
No, that's if we go by car.
Yeah,
when I used to go by bus, it used to take me about 4 hours, and sometimes if I have to wait for the bus more, then take up to 6 hours.
MashaAllah.
Wow.
So that's something
So
like I cannot really digest, wow, so many hours on travel. But yeah, MashaAllah.
SubhanAllah, you remember these hardships that you go for knowledge, right? I mean, at the time it does seem difficult, but when you look back, like MashaAllah, it's nice that Allah gave you that chance to go through that, put in the effort to seek His pleasure, right?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I think those struggles are the ones that define everything that we do today. Like what we do today may not have enough meaning if we didn't go through that necessarily.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Also, another point perhaps is that I believe at the time you were studying architecture, right, Aki?
Yep, I was studying architecture at the point of that.
And fast forward some years later, when I met you again, you had this venture in a somewhat almost different field, which is branding with Outta the Box. So this particular thing is quite interesting to us, because we talk about a lot of following our dreams and following our passion all the time, especially in what we do in our work. And we all know that discovering what you're passionate about is one thing, and taking that path is another, like taking deliberate steps to that path. And for most of us, it's not really that straightforward. And of course, it's unique to each person depending on their circumstances. So I just want to start on that, perhaps, inshallah. Perhaps if you wouldn't mind sharing your personal story from the very beginning, when you start studying architecture, and how you first discovered your interest in branding, and how you charted your path, and when you followed through it. Perhaps you can share with us and shed some light to inspire us of someone like a personal journey, inshallah.
So as far as I maybe cannot remember, it all started when the angel blew the ruh in my body. But actually not a joke. To be honest, I think that was the time it started, right? The Hadith talks about, that is the time it determines what we are going to do in this life, and, a lot of different things about us. But as I grew up, I didn't have a lot of the control of the things that I had around me, but a lot of those things kind of pushed me towards like a creative directions, even when I was young. And I had this whole passion for sketching and actually creative thinking. And I never realized it was creative thinking. And everybody, like, let's say in my class in junior school, high school, they always had this thing that this guy has some like creative ways of doing things or solving some problems.
Okay.
And but then I never realized that because, well, the society I came from, it didn't really promote the aspect of, pursuing such careers. And being from the Indian subcontinent, especially, and I think, like Asia in general, we have this
Similar
kind of a thing that,
there's certain professional pathways that you're expected somewhat to go through.
Actually, I was curious also on that note, right? Like, because Malaysian typically will say like it's either doctor, engineer, lawyer. What's the other one? It's four, right? So I was wondering, do they have this kind of thing, like cultural thing, also in your where you grew up?
Yeah, as a doctor is in the top, right? I have lost count of how many people have told me to become a doctor since I was young. That the profession is amazing and it's helping people and saving lives and whatnot. But we need to ask the question: does it really align with who I am and my purpose of being here? So there was this thing, but I did see that contrast between, let's say, Southeast Asia. Is the pressure is there, but it's not to the degree that you have no choice, but you can actually make your own choice, and other options are kind of presented to you. Plus, it's like it's either be a doctor or nothing else. A doctor or an engineer, or there are a couple of people in the list, but being a branding expert or even architecture was like in the bottom because it's like a creative field.
Right? Architecture is also considered like okay.
But for me personally, architecture kind of connected with me, and I would still say that even if I've left that career, it still is something that is close to my heart because I really love the craft and how it is. And even my grandmother's elder brother, he's a self-taught architect. And
self-taught architect. Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of the houses in our area back in India, he's the one who made the plan and
wow.
Mashallah.
Wow. He actually has product then. Wow. Mashallah.
Yeah, so he's an interesting person, to be honest. Rahimahullah, he passed away a couple of years ago. And just fast forwarding, like there's a lot of details in certain parts of my life, but then fast forward, I'm finishing high school and deciding what to do for my future path. I actually thought of becoming a mechanical engineer, but it was not because I had a passion in it. It's just because everybody was going to be an engineer, some sort of engineer. Right?
Automatic decision.
Yeah, so kind of like the peer pressure came in. And then one of my friends, he showed me these engineering books, and I was like, nope, this is not for me.
Okay. Just to give one book, okay.
So, but at the time, I call this as creative mood swing kind of thing, where a lot of creative people tend to face such things, is where they have these times they just want to do something creative. There were times where I put like pages all over my wall in Saudi Arabia, and bedroom wall, and I started sketching stuff, and I actually sketched the Abraj al-Bayt in Makkah, the clock tower. So I sketched it in intricate detail, although I never did a course in sketching, or I never did a course in architectural drawings. And so that kind of came to my mind. I was like, okay, maybe architecture would be an interesting field to pursue. So that was kind of the decision-making part. But at the same time, there was something else going on, which also I didn't realize was paving towards this path. Is I had this passion for da'wah and trying to spread good and whatnot. And I saw this page called TDR, the Daily Reminder. And I saw how they made these creative posters to kind of spread goodness and whatnot. So I was like, I want to do the same thing, and I started an Islamic page on Facebook. It's there till today, but it's inactive. I don't really.
Oh, okay.
Tell us the name. We want to look it up.
It's called Al Husna.
Al Husna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
how old are you, by the way, at this time when you had this, like you discovered this and mashallah, like this design, and you can see a place where you can fit in the da'wah, for example?
I was between 17 to 18. I was turning 18 around that time. Yeah.
Mashallah.
Okay.
So, but then like when I started practicing, it was around 14. So as I reached that age, I saw everyone doing so much to like benefit everybody else, and I was like, "What am I doing?"
The FOMO kicks in, huh? Fear of missing out. Okay, gotcha there.
So I saw them doing this, so I started sharing some interesting reminders. So I started like collecting, gems from lectures that I hear and whatnot. And then one day I thought, like, I just sharing the work. I want to make some creatives. So I made the logo. That was my very first logo I made just for myself. And the way I made it, I sketched it on a paper, scanned it, put it on paint, and I painted every single part of it. and
paint, mashallah.
Wow.
So we say, in the industry, every designer starts with the Paint app, Microsoft Paint app. So I used that, and then I realized that I couldn't make all these posters and whatnot on Paint. So I pushed myself to learn Photoshop. So I never did a course in Photoshop.
Okay.
And till today, I haven't done a course in Photoshop, but I know a lot about it just because I played around, tried to learn a lot of different things. So that's where I started putting out these posts, and slowly my design style started improving. But still, it didn't kick in me that maybe this is a path that I should follow, right? So I went ahead with
sort of like a what you do as your free time, as a passion project kind of thing at the time.
Kind of a hobby, right?
A hobby, okay.
And so that's where I decided to go for architecture. I applied to university in Malaysia, and I came in. So when I started architecture, I met a couple of brothers who were in the university, were making these magazines, Islamic magazines, and I was like, hey, you guys are doing these magazines, spreading some good. How about I help you with the design of it, and then you guys do the content making and everything. So I used to do these magazines, and that also boosted my skills in the field. So this is the part where it's slowly getting better. And there was this one brother, he hired me and he paid me for the job. But still, I didn't think that this could be a career path I could follow. So I was getting so many like hints that this could work out, but that cultural baggage kind of like still stuck to me that no, I don't have a degree in this. Why would I even follow this path and whatnot? So my turning point came in like two ways. One is that I read a book about change by Dr. A.K. Bakar. I bought this book from DCB, and the theme that really stuck to me was that, you know, in order to change something in your life, you need to take risk. And people tend to be in their comfort zone and they don't want to take risk in life. And that comfort zone kind of makes them not achieve huge leaps in life and try to do, you know, things that others haven't done. They just go with whatever they see is like, you know, easy going, and, you know, there's no risk involved in that.
Yep.
So that stuck to me. And one day we had attended this lecture with Sheikh Ibrahim Nuhu, and I would say Sheikh was like, may Allah reward him immensely, and he's benefited all of us here. And one of the brothers asked after the class, Sheikh, we want to get married. And, you know, all of us are still students. We need to wait until we graduate and get a job. And then only we can get married. And Sheikh was like, who told you that you have to graduate in order to start earning money? You know, and I was like, oh, interesting. I never thought of that. And then he was like, see, it's good that you guys are doing these different things, be it architecture, be it engineering, be it even, you know, becoming a doctor. He was like, all these are skills that you can put together, but it is not necessary that Allah has put your risk only in that.
Wow.
Perhaps your risk is somewhere else too. And that was like the aha moment I had that, oh, this is what I was waiting for, you know? So at that moment, I put all these portfolio that I was told you about, you know, all these different things I did.
Yeah.
I put them in like few pieces of paper, and someone told me that there was an opening at Nawawi Institute. So
okay.
I immediately applied, and they invited me for an interview, and like there was a very first job interview I ever had in my life. So
MashaAllah.
the brother and the sister who were interviewing me, at the end of the interview, they're like, oh, so when do you want to start? I was like, when do you want to start? I'm hired.
Still can't believe it at the time,
So I would say that it was definitely a gift from Allah Azza wa Jal, that, you know, we contribute towards dawah, we contribute towards helping Islam grow, and then Allah gives back much more than that. You know, Allah gave me a means of earning my living while I actually love doing that. So I've heard this from so many brothers and sisters during like Islamic conferences. They say that we've been volunteers for the conference and whatnot, and it opened up a career path they never thought of.
MashaAllah.
So that's kind of like a journey where, you know, I kind of shifted from architecture into the creative field.
Yeah.
Branding came at a point where I met one of my mentors, Chris Doe, and he put this whole idea that you need to niche down and you need to really be focused on one thing that makes you different. And, you know, people see the value in that, and you also become an expert at it rather than doing the jack of all trades. So people want to do a lot of things thinking that would kind of help them achieve higher, or they will get noticed. But to be honest, like doing one thing, focusing on that and really excelling at that, and then maybe going to something else and excelling at that kind of works much, you know, effectively. So that's where branding came into the picture. You know, brand strategy and all those specific. But before that, there was a little bit of like, you know, all that the journey was coming through. There were like parts of it where I was doing logo projects and brand identity projects and whatnot. But never thought that branding was the field that I really, really had to go to until that point of like listening to him and getting to know people.
It's sort of like you stumbled across branding as you were, you know, discovering slowly and going in that direction, right?
Yep.
And something quite inspiring to me from your personal story, from your sharing, is that it starts with small steps. It started with Microsoft Paint, even when you didn't really know your direction, but you knew that you had that passion in you, or sort of like in a general way what you want to do, which is to help the community, to spread good firstly as well, and also in a creative way. And what inspired me from that particular story is that you perhaps went through the small steps. It doesn't have to be an immediate thing that, okay, I need to do this, but sometimes you just be in that particular environment, and if you have the good intention, inshallah, Allah will open doors for you. So that's one lesson that I can perhaps derive from this particular story, mashallah.
Yeah, and I also love the point that Faraz mentioned about how Sheikh Ibrahim said that your risk can come from many different sources. And one thing I crossed my mind as well is that we tend to think of risk as purely money and wealth, right? But there's so many forms of risk, right? For example, what Faraz has gone through, the risk of having good friends, the risk of discovering your passion and how you can serve the deen of Allah, and the risk of uncovering one event after another. So, mashallah, all these things as a whole, they are all risk.
Yeah, mashallah. And even, that Allah, as Brother Faraz mentioned before, that Allah allows you to serve His deen in what you do as well, in your work. This is also a very big ni'mah. This is also a big risk from Allah. So this is some really good lessons, mashallah. Barakallah feek.
I often say, when we say fi sabilillah, it's two ways, right? There's fi sabilillah as in Arabic, in the path of Allah, and there's fi sabilillah, that is like you get benefits, the fees, fee in English.
Okay.
Nice one. Okay.
Mashallah. Yeah. But also one thing that really stood out as well was that you knew your, let's say you didn't know what you had to do, but you knew your big why from the start, which is to the passion to serve the deen. So that really helped you on that journey. So really identifying your sense of purpose in the beginning, even though you don't know the ways to achieve it yet. Perhaps that's also a very good starting point, for the listeners out there, if they are wanting to explore their passion.
And
interests.
I like the point when Faraz tell that he niched down to branding, because everyone is human, right? So we cannot do everything, because sometimes we have maybe da'i or even anyone calling to Islam that he wants to do everything. He wants to be the speaker. He wants to be the go-to guy, right? I like that. I like that point. We are human. We need to niche down whatever our expertise, and inshallah, it's easier like that than trying to do everything.
True.
Yeah,
mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah. I really like that point as well, because I remember this. I think we talked about this in another interview as well with Sheikh Wa'il Ibrahim. So I remember one of the advice that he gave me personally was like, find what your niche is and double down on it. Don't do what everyone else is doing. So like even he reflected his own personal journey. Like he said that he initially wanted to do a PhD in Islamic studies because he wanted to, like the big why was the same as inshallah all of us here as well, which is to serve the deen of Allah. So he wanted to do that. But the advice that some shuyukh gave him was like, everybody does this already. But what you have is a special skill. You know something about pornography addiction. Double down on that, because a lot of people are struggling on this. And mashallah, like he really, really focused on that. And now he's sort of known like an expert in his field. So I think that's, to me, I think that was very valuable for us as well at the Barakah Effect. Because like we said very early on, we can't do everything. And it's kind of like, okay, like there's a lot of people doing a lot of things. What can we focus on? Where can we add value to the ummah based on what Allah give us at this point of time? And then the important thing is the why. That's the one that never changes. Like perhaps in 5 years down the road, it might be something else, right? It might be, we might even join the branding crew for us, right? Who knows?
True.
Actually, I have one small thing I would love to share. There is, the blessing of mashayikh in life, in our life. And Sheikh Ibrahim is one of them who did. In fact, there was another Sheikh back in Saudi Arabia. His name is Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim. He also mentioned something I believe has been, helping me still cope up with whatever I'm doing, is that I forgot the hadith he discussed about, but he mentioned that, you could turn whatever you're doing in life into ibadah just with the intention that you keep. And I think it was the first hadith in the Arba'in an-Nawawiyah, in Al-A'mal bin-Niyat. And he was mentioning that, whatever career you're going towards, even attending the classes that you're going for in the university could be turned into ibadah if you put your intention that, okay, once I finish all of this, I'm going to go back and serve the deen. So every hour that you spend in the class, every minute, every second, you're getting rewards for that just because of that intention you made.
MashaAllah.
So that is something that actually was there in my mind since Sheikh had mentioned. I think that would be something that drives all of us forward.
MashaAllah. That one principle just like opened the hijab of like world of possibilities, isn't it?
Yeah, mashallah. And also like just a very good point of benefit in that sense, perhaps we don't underestimate the power of a good word that you say to someone else. Perhaps that word might inspire that person to change their lives as a turning point. For example, what Brother Faraz mentioned before, perhaps to the one delivering the speech, it was just like a normal speech, but you never know what impact you might have on the person listening to it. So never underestimate your good deeds, even if you think they are small, So one lesson from that, mashallah. Yeah. And also about discovering our niche, right? I remember the exercise that we went through when we did our brand discovery in the Barakah Effect. That was quite inspiring to me because it really sort of focused and gave some clarity about what we want to achieve, what our niche is, where we should not go, where we should go, so it gives us the sense of direction. So mashallah, I think this is amazing. And perhaps Brother Faraz, you can also expand a bit on that particular thing about brands, right? Like what you do with Outta the Box, for example. For many, branding is still such a foreign concept. For a lot of us, for example, for the team in the Barakah Effect, before we had that discovery session with Outta the Box, we used to think about branding as having a logo. So when we went through that discovery session, mashallah, it opened our eyes to the amazing world of branding. And it's really more than what we think, isn't it? So in your, perhaps in your words or experience, how can we best describe branding? Why branding? Why build a brand?
There's so many answers to that question.
So many pathways, yeah, mashallah.
So many pathways you could go to. Yeah. But I would say is that, if we go to, one word, why it is important to build a brand is, if you want to leave a legacy, then you definitely need to build a brand that people will remember you after you go, after you leave. And there is so much misconception about this word branding in the industry, among people and whatnot. And actually, I started digging deep into why people may be thinking that a brand is a logo. And if you go back in history, and for those who are listening, if we say that, if you think of the word brand 100, 200, 300 years later, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Perhaps it would be branding animals, like putting a mark on the animals to show that ownership.
Like, branding the cow or something like this, right?
Branding the cow, the horse, just to show that show ownership. And actually, branding is indeed a mark, but it is not a physical mark. It evolved into becoming a mark in people's hearts. So it's more of like not physical, but it's something that people experience, an emotional mark that is there in people's hearts and minds. So that's where, today people think maybe it's a logo, it's, it's a product that people sell, is a promise and whatnot. It actually comes together. It's a bigger picture that leaves that mark in people's hearts and minds based on experiences they get. And, I was reflecting on an ayah from the Quran, and this ayah is repeated in multiple surahs, and Allah keeps reminding us that وجعل السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون. Allah Azza wa Jal always keeps talking about, Allah gave us hearing, Allah gave us sight, Allah gave us a heart, and these three are actually parts of a brand building process that is very important, because the heart of the brand is so important. What are your values? What are you working towards? What's the mission that you have? The vision. All of that comes with the heart. The culture that you have and whatnot. What you stand up for, and then comes the voice that translates into what you speak, and what you spread around the world and whatnot, and the impact that you leave behind from your speech, the consistency you try to have through that. And then finally is what people see. So, if your heart is aligned with your speech and, your actions, then your what is seen through your actions is going to be, aligned with the heart, right? So the main goal with branding is to make sure that what is in your heart is really shown outside and people perceive it correctly, right? So going from an architectural background, my understanding of branding slowly improved to the point that now I see branding as a space occupied in people's hearts and minds, right? Because of the impact that you leave behind through the experiences. It could be the word that we just talked about earlier, the Mashayikh saying, a small word, but it means so much for the person. It leaves such an impact. So we never know a small action. It may be nothing for us, but it may mean the world to the person who's experiencing it. And that's where branding is important. And if we do this subconsciously, it doesn't really leave the impact that it could actually leave. And then we consciously take steps towards leaving that impact and towards leaving that emotional mark. That's where branding is done intentionally, and everything that we do has a deeper purpose, a deeper why behind, we do it. Because Allah did not create anything without purpose. Everything that we have has purpose in it. And our actions are also, something that Allah has created. So they have a purpose behind it too.
Yeah, mashallah. I think it's all about being intentional in what you have as a sense of identity and what you present out to others, so that they have the accurate picture of what you are trying to present, right? And that's the consistency that you talk about, how people experience and through the perception and what impact you want to leave behind. So I think these are very important things that for any endeavor actually, because we usually think about branding as branding, this company is a brand, this clothing line is a brand, but actually it's more than that, right? It's even about how you want to present yourselves out there, even your personal brand, developing your personal brand, for example. Even for any, let's say, venture that you are going about, it's important and it's very useful to be intentional in what we want to achieve and how you want to get there, and how people perceive that thing, so that you become more effective in what you do. So mashallah, this is something perhaps I think that a lot of us take for granted and perhaps don't have the knowledge about, if I may say. And even I notice, for example, in a lot of our Muslim circles, for example, this is rarely talked about, in that sense that, okay, I want to do some da'wah work, for example, and okay, we just come together and we just do what we do, just what comes naturally. But actually, this is not the most impactful way or the most effective way of going about it, right? So, how can as Muslims, how can we capitalize on branding to have that clarity on what we want to achieve in this life and in the akhirah?
I love a keyword that you mentioned about the definition, right? It's about the emotional mark that you leave in people's hearts and minds based on the experiences they get from you and the impact that you leave behind them. And basically, we have branding when it comes, and on a personal level, you call it reputation, right? That's basically it, right? I mean, we hear this all the time, right? Even at the workplace, right? That you hear about somebody's name. So somebody mentions the word, say, Faisal. It's like, oh, that guy, he is something, something, something. That's kind of your brand. That's kind of like what people perceive of what you have, whether it's right or wrong. Allahu Alam, whether it's deliberate or not. I think this is a reminder as well that sometimes you do stuff subconsciously, like you don't really realize. I mean, you do it out of a sense of habit, but those repeated subconscious actions create that sense of perception. Oh, this guy is like this. So a very simple example, sometimes within our own circles as well, circles of friends, circle of Muslim friends, sometimes you kind of have this kind of very off remarks like, he's not punctual. He's the kind of guy who's never punctual. That's kind of a brand, right? So, because that's the kind of mark that he's left on you, because like, after all your experiences with him, he never turns up on time. So, so that's one thing I got from this. It's what the emotional mark. So it's maybe not necessarily rational, but it's just that perception based on that, because that's is the emotion that sticks into people's hearts and minds, right?
Absolutely, and I think I will go back to like one of the like there are two instances. Firstly, it was the time where one of the Sahabi at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he went and killed somebody during the war, and someone who had said the Shahada, right? And he said that he was not sincere about it, right? And when he went to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ asked, did you open his heart and see that there was the iman was not there, or he was not genuine about what he mentioned, right? Close to what the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. And that's where we kind of see that what is apparent is quite important. And people can say that, it's enough to have iman in the heart, a very common statement that goes among the community. And if there is truly iman in the heart, it would translate into actions. And if it's there in the actions, then we, like Umar radiallahu anhu said, we don't get wahi anymore. So we have no choice but to judge a book by its cover, I would say, right? And I don't like the statement that they say that don't judge a book by its cover. To be honest, you should tell the person who designed the book to tell that, to make sure that the book
good point.
I think as human beings, we have that tendency. We will judge according to what we see. Sorry, my internet wasn't so good. But as human beings, that's the tendency that we have. We will judge by based on what's apparent, whether it's right or wrong. Allahu Alam, but that's our tendency.
Absolutely.
I
remember there was a leadership course about this. They showed this iceberg model. Have you guys seen how leadership courses do this? Like how you perceive, it's like a kind of like how an iceberg looks like, right? You only see like a very small portion, but it's a huge stuff down there, right? So what people see, your akhlaq, the way you speak, your body language and so on, that's kind of like just a little bit on the surface, but deep down there, you don't know. And there's a lot of things that might build up to that tip of the iceberg, which are the small minority which you perceive.
True. And even for reflecting on, I guess, as a Muslim, you always want to project good akhlaq because you want to emulate what Rasulullah ﷺ and his companions were on. And that's really important. And it comes to that aspect as well, what you project out there as a form of da'wah, as a means of da'wah as well, because through your good akhlaq, people see Islam and people may get inspired with that. So even, projecting your personal brand as a Muslim, this is very important. And compromising it at the same time paints a bad picture on Muslims. Although Islam is pure and good, but a lot of the times it's the Muslims who paint a bad picture to Islam, right? So that's one perspective as well, that we have to always have consistency with what we know of our deen, what we believe in, and we project the same thing out there, you know. So that's something of a point of a reflection. So I guess, like, as a point of benefit, when it comes to a personal branding, let's go for personal branding. Like, how can we as Muslims really take hold of our identity, know our identity, and be clear about what we want to be as, what we project as a brand out there? And I recall the rediscovery exercise that we did with Outta the Box in the Barakah Effect. It was quite a process that you were forced to think about deeply of your core values of what you want to achieve and what you want to be here.
Get very intentional, very mindful.
Mashallah, yes, exactly. And perhaps to benefit the listeners out there, is to start to think about their personal brand, for example. How do you suggest we go about this, to be more intentional in how we develop our personal brand, Brother Faraz?
My simple answer to that would be, who was the best personal, brand in the history of mankind? That was our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We reflect on his life. Every part of his life is something that Allah had planned. Even, his birth, the timing of his birth, and, every incident that happened, the incident of the elephant, or, everything led to this bigger picture. And it was the grand plan of Allah to, train the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to become the final messenger, to, leave a legacy that has to stick up until, the day of judgment. So, we often have this thing that, though he was a prophet and, he was great, so we may not achieve what he achieved, but then the reality is, what the prophet left behind for us is a huge, strategic framework of how we can lead our life to build our personal brands and know who we are and what not. And, every hadith that you read, every ayah that you read is constantly asking us to reflect, right? The Quran is full of, the aspect of reflecting upon ourselves, reflecting upon what is there, and so on. So there is this thing that if a person does not know his purpose, or he does not know why he is on earth, then it's not really a valuable life the person is leading. There is no future that he or she is looking towards and working towards. So to answer your question, we look at the Prophet in 23 years, he managed to leave a legacy of so many Muslims until today, right? Billions and billions of Muslims until today. So and also he built a community around him from 0 people, that is starting from him. Then he went to his family, and then it expanded to his companions, and then they spread the word, and it went on and on. And each of them built a strong reputation, like you mentioned, that we know until today, right? And that reputation they got was because of their company with the Prophet and what they learned and what they applied, and so on. So, building a personal brand is obviously, there are a lot of steps to do. It's not like, overnight we have like a strategy session and then suddenly you have like personal brand, right? Like we mentioned, like having the belief, knowing what is important to us, knowing our values is definitely important. But then the second thing to that is taking action and making sure that our actions follow that. And when our actions follow that, slowly people will perceive. The more people perceive consistent attributes about ourselves, the more successful the personal brand is. Right? If there are 100 people who says that Faraz is somebody who perhaps does not stick up to his words. It doesn't, maybe he's lazy and all those kind of stuff. Then it's a bad perception that is being said. if there's 100 people who are saying multiple things about me, that they're like, okay, I think he's an amazing person, and the person says, oh no, I haven't had a good experience with him. Like that is inconsistency, where perhaps what you're doing might be good, but you're not communicating it well through your actions. You're not conscious about your actions and the way you present it yourself. Maybe the way you dress up, the way you look, down to like even the perfume that you put on yourself. Like all of this builds a picture in people's mind about you, about who you are. And if it is consistent, like 100 people say, like, okay, this person is generous, this person is good, he's been active in the community, that's where the brand can grow and be known. And we know the Prophet ﷺ for the mission he came for, right? There were a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that in matters of the dunya, you kind of like go with what the experts say, but then when it comes to the deen, the Prophet is the one who came to teach us. But the reality is the Prophet taught us even about the dunya. There's so many things that we can take from the Prophet's life to apply into our daily life. So that's what I would say. Like the Prophet's life is more than enough to reflect on building a personal brand. We don't have to look at people in our times, necessarily.
Right, to summarize, building a brand, knowing your values and taking action based on those values.
Yes, knowing your values, making sure that it is verbally communicated, different means of communication, and making sure that your actions reflect that. Because otherwise, that's called hypocrisy, where a brand becomes, be it a person or a brand, an actual brand. We could call that brand a munafiq brand. It has something else in the heart, and really, the action says something else. So,
by virtue of this discussion alone, we can already like sort of refute that argument that says, iman is in my heart. So what if I don't? So and so I don't pray or I don't do these wajib things, right? I mean that doesn't. It's kind of, if it's incongruent with your values, it doesn't show that, right? I mean, I don't know how to word this properly, right? You know what I mean, right? Subhanallah.
Yeah. It's not consistent with what's inside of you and what you project outside, right?
Yeah.
There's a discrepancy there, which shows that something's off there.
Right. Yeah.
MashaAllah.
If it's in the heart, it would have been seen by the apparent actions and appearances from that reflect what's inside.
Yeah, that's a good point, MashaAllah. So also that thing about emulating Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is the very best starting point for the Muslim, because in his life, he built a community, as Brother Faraz mentioned, in a short space of time, and that the community, went from Jahiliyah to the most successful community that the world has ever seen in a short space of time. So that shows you that's something that is precious, that we always can look into to inspire us in our journey to make the best of our life, and to where should we start when we want to build our personal brand. So in a nutshell, seek knowledge about the deen.
Something crossed my mind when Faraz was describing this, mashallah, like he's saying like the companions themselves built the brand for themselves, right? So that immediately this ayah struck in my mind, Surah Al-Fath, the last ayah. So last ayah go, Muhammadun Rasulullah, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. And those who are with him, and his companions, radiallahu anhum, they are strong against the disbelievers and they are merciful amongst themselves. That kind of the brand that they have. So, and Allah describes them in such ways, and speaking about how firm they are, and you see it from their outer actions. And that kind of crossed my mind, like if you live during the time of the Sahaba, even as a non-Muslim, and you read this ayah, you kind of have like oh wow, I want to meet these guys. I mean, these guys must be something else, right? This guy. So that kind of like creates an impression about people, So you have this testimony, and this testimonial is not, it's not people from people like us. It's from Allah Azza wa Jalla, the Creator Himself, who gave this positive testimonial. So I think, mashallah, that crossed my mind when Brother Faraz was speaking about this.
Mashallah. And the Sahaba, they were known to be very, there's a certain characteristics, when they about the Sahaba, right? Even the Romans and what, when they talked about the Sahaba, like it was like, wow, these are amazing people, you know?
Yeah.
Mashallah.
MashaAllah.
So I guess
we know the Sahaba for like if you think of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, you think of like a very humble person, right? When you think of Umar radiallahu anhu, you think of someone who is like strong and
Tough guy, yeah.
a tough person, right? You think of Uthman radiallahu anhu, you think of someone
Modest.
who's shy, modest,
gentle.
Yeah.
These are the things that the perceptions that were created by each companion, right? And it was so strong in their lives that people like till today they see them like when you hear just the name. And this is where we go back to the aspect of the logo, right? Yes, logo is important, but logo is equivalent to a face of a person. But do we know the face of any one of them? We don't know the face of anyone, and they are known to us, and we love them, and we really, admire them. It's not because of their face. Face is a way to identify somebody, right? It does retain all the values and make the face valuable. But then, two people can have exactly the same face. They'd be looking exactly the same, but one might be, going towards Jannah in terms of his actions and his Iman, and one might be going towards Jahannam in terms of his actions and his Iman, right? So the face doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's what's inside. And the value of the face increases. You see, like we say the word that I see nur on your face. Not that there is like suddenly like light coming out of the face, because of like how much value and strength is there within the heart itself.
Is the inherent qualities that endure, right? A lot of the Sahaba, we don't know how they look like. We don't know how the scholars of the past look like, but it's their qualities and their attitudes and how they are that endures. And to this day, that's what Allah granted barakah to endure until Yawm al-Qiyamah. So that's something amazing.
SubhanAllah, something crossed my mind when Faraz was saying this, right, Brother Reeza? One companion that comes to mind, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So if you read the narrations, you know he's a very strong guy, right? He's very serious, very very strict, and mashallah, very firm. Yeah. But then reminded me of some narrations. He's actually a very thin and skinny and a small person. In fact, there was one narration where the companions saw his feet for the first time when he was up a tree, and they kind of laughed at him. And the Prophet ﷺ defended him, saying, "Oh, wallahi, those feet, I think it was the portion, there was a portion of his feet, it will be the size of Uhud on Yawm al-Qiyamah." So, mashallah. But it just crossed my mind, like, yeah, we don't really know how they look like. I mean, if you look at them in terms of their appearance, you might not know the kind of strength of character they have. In fact, it might even distract you from who they really are underneath, right? Yeah. So, mashallah, that's a really good point. Like, the face is only one portion of describing a bigger whole, but even without seeing that, you can actually tell a lot about a person. Mashallah.
Mashallah. And it also comes down perhaps the next part of the discussion in regards to lessons about branding from Rasulullah. I was quite surprised the other day when you mentioned you were coming up with a book. MashaAllah, Barakallah Feek.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we would like to know more about your upcoming project, and how it started. How did that spark the idea, and like how do you go about it, and why are you going about it, and tell us a bit more about your upcoming project, inshallah.
So inshallah, I mean, I ask you guys and everyone else to make dua that I make sure I finish it. At least I could. If I do die, then I die after finishing it. So,
may Allah grant
make it easy.
One of the reasons that I thought of this book, there are actually a couple of reasons, especially what we just discussed about, like the Prophet ﷺ, him being the individual that we could actually emulate in our lives to learn so much from. And I've always had this thing that Islam should drive whatever we're doing, right? And we kind of discussed that earlier, touched upon that earlier. And that would be one reason that this book's idea sparked in my mind. I was like, when we started reflecting on the life of the Prophet, and there's so many different branding lessons we could learn from. So, and in fact, when I started learning branding, I started learning the different principles from people in the West, and people who are not Muslims. Right? Most people that I've seen, at least on the top, who are setting the standards for the industry, they're not Muslims. But a lot of the things they were sharing about how to build company culture, how to build an organization, and all of that, I started thinking like these are things that are taught to us as Muslims. And the different principles that we're supposed to follow, and the pillars of Islam, the pillars of Iman, and the foundations that we have as Muslims. Everything that the Prophet ﷺ taught us is to make sure that we as an ummah, we become great. And we keep seeing a hadith that talks about going back to the sunnah of the Prophet, sticking to the sunnah of the Prophet. And I had this aha moment that, obviously it was about success, but Allah plans well. So, Allah's plan is great. And I started seeing these patterns in whatever was revealed to us, that, all of this was intentional, right? We do this thing, then we will achieve this, right? In branding, we talk about being different. And the Prophet ﷺ always talked about being different. Be different from the Jews and the Christians. Grow your beard, do this and that, and different things that the Prophet ﷺ said, be different from them. Even like fasting, Ashura was also, something that the Prophet ﷺ said, you do it different. And in branding, we talk about this whole idea about being different from others who are there in the market. It helps you stick out. It helps you really stand out from the rest of them. And to be honest, Muslims really stand out from the rest of the people in the world. Right? That's a very small thing from the lessons from the life of the Prophet ﷺ we could take and apply, and it's so powerful that it makes us unique, and a community that people will really see. Okay, they notice what we do. So that would be one thing, but inshallah we could touch upon a couple more things after this, inshallah.
Mashallah. But for us, if you don't mind, like I really love that point that you said, like, so the more that you learn from these non-Muslim, let's say, brand experts, the more you realize that, oh, mashallah, our deen already taught this. Can you give him maybe a couple more examples, like how? Like, for example, you said one of them is like differentiate yourselves, right? Like, is there any other like mind-blowing stuff like, oh, mashallah, this is already in a hadith or in the ayah Quran, for example?
Yeah, there are other examples, definitely. Like one of them, they talk about organizations being like one body, right? And the different departments that are there, each and every employee impacts what the brand is going to be, what people are going to perceive about the brand. And I was like, that sounds very familiar. And then I just looked on the hadith about the ummah being like one body, and each part of the body is important. And if a part of the body is sick or is hurt, the rest of the body is in pain, and it's in unrest. And we see that every part of the ummah, that kind of goes back to a couple of the things you mentioned also, right? Like each body part has its own role in what it does. And it's not necessary that everyone has to do the same thing. And we need people in different fields, different industries to kind of make that bigger body to, stand up for our values and, stick to that. So we see this in corporations where they're consistently training people to, embody their brand in their
values, their principles,
values and whatnot. And it's so surprising when they see that some employee went on a different direction against those values. They might even fire the person just for that value. And we see news from time to time, this company, they fired this person just because this person did not follow a value they had for themselves. And, for us Muslims, it's the same way. Like if we are disunited and we're not, sticking to the values that the Prophet ﷺ taught us, then that will not make us succeed. Right? The path to success is going back to the Sunnah, going back to what the Prophet ﷺ left behind for us, and it's that simple. Right? We're not. It's not rocket science. It's so easy for us. It's just follow the Quran, follow the Sunnah, follow the companions, the legacy of those people who left us, radiallahu anhum. So that's what I see, from like the non-Muslims, what they're teaching, and then what we've been taught every other day as Muslims.
MashaAllah. That's what we found as well when we were setting out and doing the Barakah Effect. In our professional lives, what would be beneficial in our work is actually what we should embody as Muslims, and therefore that is a path to success, inshallah, to embody the Islamic principles. And when you're authentic to our deen, when you're authentic, you have the correct intentions to please Allah, then that's, as a secondary thing, Allah grants you success in all your endeavors and grants barakah in it because you're embodying the Islamic principles. But at the same time, these Islamic principles are very, high quality principles and qualities that endure and are known to be, as you said, the best practice basically of whatever we are doing, in whatever we are in the workplace and whatever we are endeavoring in. So mashallah, this is a great big lesson for us all, that if we just incorporate all the Islamic values, we embody the Islamic values, this is the first path, the foundational path to success. And mashallah, this is a lesson as well for all of us. And as well, in terms of supporting our deen, right? I remember you mentioning in one of our conversations that Islam actually is not harmed by us not playing a part in serving it. And if we are not going to serve Islam, Allah is not in need of us to serve Islam. So what we do in our lives to serve Islam, this is actually for us, for our benefit in the dunya and the akhirah. And this is something that also we can learn about, emulating Rasulullah SAW in terms of how we incorporate the Islamic principles, for example, in whatever we do. So this is something amazing as well. One of the lessons that I was able to derive from when we were conversing about this topic.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely there, you reflect upon like things from history, a brand from history that has survived for 1,400 years, and you have people following it, and really adhering to the values of it. Because this is where I'm like, there are people who were known before that also, and they're still known today, but a true follower is the one that actually embodies the teachings of a person, right? And if you see from that perspective, I don't really see anyone in the world can compete with the Prophet ﷺ and also compete with Islam on that. And the thing is that the Islam as a legacy is a brand that was left behind that has outlived like all the people that were there when since its inception until today. Like, and it started at the time of Adam alayhi salam, not like it started
correct.
at the time of Prophet. Since that time until today, it has been going on, and we know that it will keep going on until the day of judgment, no matter who comes, no matter how many people change, and all the people that are there during a timeline, during an era, whoever get that honor, like we just discussed, like it's an honor to serve Islam, is that we are chosen to serve Islam by Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? And that's an honor. And if you're not chosen, then that's something that maybe we might want to reflect upon.
Yeah, mashallah. So amazing stuff. I guess you wanna mention the title of your book so people can look out and maybe the target date of release, perhaps, inshallah?
Inshallah. So it's 101 branding lessons I learned from, or we learn from the life of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And inshallah, the intention of the book is not just that we learn branding from our own perspective, but it's also to set a standard in the industry. And this is inshallah, a dream that I have. Hopefully Allah allows me to accomplish it, is that I want to see more and more Muslims in the branding industry who are setting standards for the world to follow. And if you see many of these things, if you apply it in your own business, in your own personal brands, it actually leads to a very successful business, because these are lessons that could be applied in different ways. It's not just in our deen, but also in our dunya aspects as well. Inshallah, hopefully, I'm hoping to release it sometime this year. Pushing myself to do it as soon as I can.
This is published by the Da'wah Corner, is it? Da'wah Corner.
Inshallah. Hopefully, I've spoken with the brother Farid. He's interested in publishing it. So we hope that the Ummah could benefit from it, and also maybe spark something that others could leave much better things than what I may achieve.
Inshallah.
Ameen. May Allah make it easy, and may Allah grant barakah in it.
Ameen.
Yeah, so mashallah, we've covered so many angles about branding. I think it's quite beneficial for us, to me at least, is a way of thinking about branding in a different manner. There's a lot of depth in it. There's a lot of layers in it, and it's useful to really think about, what our personal brand is, especially. And mashallah. So I guess to continue on the insights, just want to ask, as we ask all our other guests as well, what sort of legacy do you want to particularly leave behind?
So it's a very deep question that I believe this question is growing over time, the answer to this question.
It's dynamic, right? Yeah.
So it's a dynamic thing. You kind of realize, okay, I want to add this more aspect to the legacy. But I believe one legacy, I remember a hadith, the Prophet conveyed, and Sheikh Ibrahim recently reminded me and one of the brothers about this, because we both were sitting together with Sheikh, and the brother was asking Sheikh, Sheikh, I want to plan something out, because there's so many different things happening in the world right now, and I fear that I would die without leaving something behind, and I want to make sure that we Muslims, we plan things out, and we work towards that plan and really accomplish something, right? Fix the problems the Ummah is facing. And to our surprise, Sheikh said that don't waste your time in planning. So I was like, okay, so what should we do? And the brother was asking, Sheikh, what should we do then? Sheikh was like, Sheikh mentioned this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, if you see the day of judgment coming towards you and you have a seed in your hand, make sure you plant it. And that's where Sheikh was like, yes, what we understood is it's good to have intentions and working towards something, but work on what is there now with the resources that you have, whatever you have. What can you work on at the moment? Because as Muslims, we live with the principle that we may not live tomorrow. So, what is the legacy that I can leave for today? And then, every day we work towards that legacy becomes bigger and bigger. So, in one word, what I hopefully want to leave behind is something that would impact people even after I've left, and hopefully it benefits me on the day of judgment, and people really see the impact of it. Not necessarily it happens in my lifetime. Maybe it's a seed that I put and it grows after my lifetime. inshallah.
Mashallah.
Brother Faraz, I actually want to ask you about how do you overcome the imposter syndrome? It seems like you have given the answer. Stop planning, just do it.
I think that is definitely the answer to it. Actually, I didn't think of that answer for imposter syndrome, but definitely the answer for imposter syndrome. Just don't plan and do what is there with the resources that you have.
You plan, but just do it with the resources what you have right now, right?
And we go back to the podcast. Allah will put barakah in it, and that will happen.
Mashallah.
Yeah, I mean, lesson here is don't overthink it. If you have an opportunity, ihris ala ma yanfa'uka, right? Good.
Yeah.
Seize the opportunity to do good, right?
As long as it's within our values, inshallah.
But since Aziz raised the point, I want to ask you now, like, so how did you overcome that imposter syndrome? I mean, think about it, right? Because you were in architecture, right? I mean, there's a lot of, even you mentioned as well, there's a lot of cultural pressure and like pursuing the kind of the career paths that people kind of expect you to take. And like kind of this arts thing is not really seen as something, and as maybe amongst the Muslim circles, it's not that common as well. Did you have to go through this? Like this feeling of, what am I doing? Like, how did you build the courage to overcome that? Yeah.
I did. I still remember quite vividly when I was entering Nawawi for the first day of my job. I was like, "What am I doing?" I was telling myself, "Are you serious? You're just going ahead with something that you don't even have a certificate to prove that you are, you're good at it, or you've really gone through like a process to learn it." And then as I went by, I actually realized that that's not needed, right? And I came across people. This was the most important thing that helped me overcome imposter syndrome. Is I looked at other people, and there's some of the brothers that we know over here. You might know Brother Usaid from Light Up 7, and there are a couple of other people that I saw that they were in different industries. Like they studied something else altogether. And they managed to succeed in something else altogether. Like there's Brother Izhar as well, who came into the creative industry. And it's just
Brother Izhar is an engineer as well, isn't it? MashaAllah.
He's an engineer. He became a creative. So when I looked at the elders and the others who were there, who did things like that at their age, that too, and that's a huge respect for them for deciding to change careers at an age like that. And I was like, okay, if they could do it, then I'm still much younger, I still have resources. So I decided, but I did get a lot of backlash from many people around me. They're like, no, why are you doing this? Go finish your degree, make sure you get a job in architecture and whatnot. And to be honest, like I mentioned, architecture still helped me, and I had the biggest struggle with my dad, and that kind of was upset. He was like, "Why did you leave architecture? You should have really gone for it." But to be honest, may Allah bless him, he is the reason that I found this passion, right? Because he's the one who supported me during my education, and that led to me discovering all of these different things. So one day I actually told Dad, that you didn't waste your money. You actually invested in what I have today, and I'm starting to use a lot of the things that I learned from architecture into branding, and that's allowed me to be unique in the industry. Just with that, so
unique in the industry. Yeah, you have this very unique background that you can channel in your design skills, isn't it?
Exactly.
Branding skills.
Trying to reach a place where somebody else cannot own what you say. And the thing is that people make over time imitate what you're doing, and actually it's actually a good sign because what you're doing is good, right? And but if you really have the drive to innovate in the dunya sense, basically you will be one step ahead of everyone else. And that's kind of the thing that I realized, going back to taking action. If you take action now with the resources that you have, you will always be one step ahead of others.
Mashallah.
Inshallah.
A lot of really powerful stuff there that we can unpack. So number one, look for other people who have done it, because you definitely won't be alone. So this is where that community really helps to inspire you. And mashallah, you realize, oh, mashallah, it is doable. If he can do it, inshallah. And like you said, like they are probably like elder than you, and probably, inshallah, I can do that. I can give it a shot as well. I think there's another one as well. I love what you said, like how you crafted it. Like a lot of people tend to think, oh, it's such a waste that you studied this, but you did this instead. And then the way you framed it was like, no, because that you started that path, that it opened the path to this. So it's not a waste at all. It is all a stepping stone to eventually shape who you are. And I think that's a really important life lesson. Because, for example, like a personal example, my wife, for example, she also studied mechanical engineering. In fact, she got first class honors in Australia. So she doesn't work as an engineer now. And so people like express like, oh, it's kind of such a waste. And in my head, like, wait, it's because she studied engineering, she met me. I'm not a waste. So I subhanallah, like this is a really important life lesson. Like everything that Allah plans in your life, if you make the choices with iman, inshallah, everything before that, even if it's a wrong decision that you made, if it turns you into something right, all of this will be righteous deeds. Subhanallah, like this is so important. Like, if you have this mindset, everything that happens in life, inshallah, keep moving forward. There's always a wisdom behind it.
Yeah, I love that bro Faraz mentioned just now when he have this disagreement with his dad, he clarifies it and talk and discuss it. And usually people will just keep it silent and like, oh, it's ignore me. Yeah, you just ignore it. Subhanallah, I like that. Subhanallah.
Inshallah. Very good. And also, like, a lot of the things that we go into, perhaps sometimes when we make that decision, sometimes it can be difficult, right? It can be a tough decision and you might face some pushback in the beginning. But actually, if you think about it, you look in hindsight of your life, for example, of what you have passed in your life, a lot of maybe, you will find that actually this is, although at the time maybe you didn't feel comfortable or maybe you didn't think it was the right one, but Allah chooses the best things for you if you have that iman in Allah with that. And you find that even though those choices sometimes were maybe perceived as not the best choices at that time, but when you look in hindsight to where you are at the moment or where you are at life, sometimes you just have to go through those little hardships to get to where you are. And then when you look back in hindsight, you become so thankful to Allah and you say, oh, I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. Alhamdulillah, So that's something that's something to reflect on as well for all of us.
Definitely. We go back to that ayah, right? It says that something, you may dislike something, but it may be good for you, and you may like something, and it may be bad for you. And then the hadith kind of backs it up, where in terms of like everything, in terms of the Muslim being khair for them, no matter good, bad, they're always steadfast.
MashaAllah. And you just can't help but think about, whatever you do in this life, of course, this is all the tests. And you know that sometimes you don't see the fruits in this life, but on the day of judgment, you will see every single thing that you did, whether it's good or bad. And you want it all to be good, and you want to please Allah with your deeds. So this is some point of reflection as well. So Alhamdulillah, Brother Faraz, share with us an ayah from the Quran or the Hadith from Rasulullah SAW, or maybe a quote from the Salaf that really motivates you every day, that really inspires you, that really gets you up and gets your blood pumping, every day.
I just mentioned the ayah and the Hadith.
Okay, you mentioned it.
That was
basically, maybe you can dig a bit deeper there. It's like, in my personal life, when I look at different stages of what I faced and what I went through, I kept seeing this thing that, every time I reflect upon this ayah during those times where, okay, this is something that I may dislike, I see it as harmful, but actually I believe that Allah has something better planned for me, and Allah is allowing me to realize that, this is not a better path, right? There was a time where I was broke. I had like absolutely nothing in my bank account, and I was getting some money, alhamdulillah, by the ni'mah of Allah Azza wa Jal, to pay off my basically rental and whatnot, but I didn't have money for food. But just a month before that, I had everything. So it was like, that one point came where, a struggle came, and then it led me to lose something, lose the source of income. And then immediately, the next month I was like broke. But at that point of time, the first thing that came to my mind is these two principles from the ayah and the hadith, where like everything that is happening to a Muslim is for their khair. And the ayah that I may dislike this, but it's actually good for me. So Allah has planned something better. And every time I think of this, it proves me right. Like every situation that I ever had in my life, I can't think of anything else where it's a bigger picture again, right? Another hadith comes to my mind is like, true sabr is when the calamity hits. And so if you can have sabr and see that this calamity is actually a blessing in disguise, it actually, like a couple of months later, my income was like quadruple what I was getting that time. And then, it was like, I had no idea, right, that Allah was leading me to that. So that point of time made me reflect and realize that, okay, maybe I was doing this thing wrong. Maybe I should focus on something else, and kind of like allowed us to step back a bit. Like we talk about this hustle culture where, or do everything, do fast and whatnot, but really it's about stepping back, reflecting, weighing what is good or bad, and then proceeding with patience. So glad tidings to those who have patience. So I would say these are the two the ayah and the hadith that keep moving me forward.
So for the benefit of the listeners again, so can you repeat what are those again? So the first ayat is
I may not be saying the ayah exactly, but then the meaning of the ayah is you may dislike something, but it is actually good for you, and you may like something, but it's actually bad for you. And the hadith is the hadith of Ajab li amr al-Muslim, yani amruhu lahu khair. The affair of the believer is strange, because all of the things are good for them. If they face something hard, some hardship, it's still good for them. Whatever good they face, that is also good for them, right? And this is not for anybody else except for the Muslim. And that's the hadith that just keeps moving me forward every time, making sure that everything that happens is for a reason, and there's a hikmah and wisdom behind everything.
Mashallah.
Mashallah.
Barakallahu feek. All right. And another thing as well, how can the listeners get in touch with you or your work? So
people can check out my IG profile. I'm active on LinkedIn as well. Okay. And
what's the profile handle, Aki?
iPatch _design.
iPatch _
IPATCH_design. Okay. And LinkedIn also, you can search me as Muhammed Faraz or iPatch. Find me there. And then you can check out our website, Outta the Box, which is, in short, you can just type otb.design, and so short form for Outta the Box, and you'll find the website. So
okay. otb.design, yeah? otb.design. Okay. MashaAllah. Jazakumullah khairan. So Alhamdulillah, I think we've covered so many things now, and we'd like to close with this particular phrase.
Sorry, Reeza.
Okay, sure.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure. Tafadhal,
So I know, Brother Faraz, you reach out to a lot of people about branding. Like I think you have a Clubhouse. You're very active on Clubhouse.
Oh yeah, I forgot
Social
about
media as well.
that.
Yeah, do you want to share a bit about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Any-
very Reza. Go ahead.
Anything
Or
specific
Faraz, yeah.
you would like to know about that?
Yeah, because I think you didn't mention that, like how we can reach out to you. It's also through the Clubhouse events that you organize, right?
Yeah. So yes, alhamdulillah, yani, by the name of Allah, I'm trying to be more and more present in the industry, and trying to get to know some of the people who are kind of leading the industry, being at the forefront and whatnot. So you could find me on Clubhouse too. We do give talks from time to time on different topics of branding and whatnot. Nowadays, we're trying to do more IG lives to share.
IG live.
So there are some upcoming IG lives
Okay.
we're planning out. So there's one the next Saturday that we have scheduled for. So Clubhouse was an interesting platform. It really helped kind of build a voice because it's a voice platform. But the voice is important, right? That's where like people really started hearing people and whatnot. So the last year in Clubhouse, it really helped kind of know different people in the industry and really engage with them and so on. So we share a lot of branding, tips and discuss a lot about branding topics and how creativity comes into the picture, the creative thinking aspect, and so on.
Great.
Mashallah.
So I'm super curious, brother. So like when you reach out to these different people within the industry, which I imagine probably majority are non-Muslim, perhaps?
Majority, yes.
Yeah. So I was just curious. I mean, probably a lot of people are like, so when they see you're a Muslim with the beard, mashallah, do you get some weird responses or like, yeah, that doesn't change anything?
No, interestingly, I get noticed much more easily because of my appearance. So it tells me
unfair advantage.
There you go.
But alhamdulillah, I've noticed this thing that people didn't have a wrong kind of approach when they knew that I'm Muslim. In fact, I'm trying my best to make my presence as a Muslim more and more stronger among these communities. And I think it will go to Clubhouse as well, since you mentioned that, there was one of the events. I told them that, hey, being a Muslim and following Islam is my identity. So there's this whole thing going around in those communities where they're like, we don't want to talk about religion, we don't want religion in our discussions and whatnot. I'm like, see, I may not be preaching you in that particular context, but then I at least need to owe up to my identity. I need to be who I am. So if you tell me not to maybe share an ayah or a hadith or anything as such, you're basically telling me not to be myself, and that's what they say, basically, be yourself and be authentic and so on. So
Yeah.
that's well, being authentic, taking authentic sources. So that's where I actually spoke with a couple of them, and I told them, hey, see, this is my complaint, that I can only be myself if I do own up to my identity as such. And they were like, it actually makes sense, otherwise I'm not being myself, and I'm being someone else. I'm just being afraid to show the world that the true picture of Islam. And this actually goes back to the one thing that I keep having in my mind, is that there's this negative perception of Muslims that has been created around the globe by the media and whatnot. And the thing is that it's our steps as Muslims that we take towards showing that we are not what the media says, and we excelling in the field, and we being leaders in our own fields. It gives an impression about Islam that Islam is the one is what drives you forward. And by the way, on a side note, in the field, in the industry, nobody knows me as Faraz.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sure because my full name is Muhammed Faraz. That's what my parents gave me as a name. So both are my names. So I decided to use the name Muhammad so that the name Muhammad is known more. So everyone knows me as Muhammad.
Mashallah.
Mashallah.
So that's one
Not
thing.
more,
that
huh?
not
Not
I
more,
think-
Just joking.
You call me Mo, as a thing, but I actually remind them, hey, I prefer the name Muhammad. Because
really?
I see some of the people also, they kind of shorten their name in the West. They
Yeah,
say that Mo. Some may do it just so that they want to kind of like have a nickname, but some may do it out of inferior, feeling inferior than others, and maybe name Muhammad might scare someone. And like the name Muhammad should make people love the individual.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I love that.
Definitely.
Subhanallah. Mashallah.
Yeah, subhanallah. I really love the point that you mentioned there, because it's true. I mean, people always have these fears, like if you keep up an Islamic appearance and Islamic conduct, and even just to share hadith and so on, people think this will give you put you at a disadvantage. But subhanallah, the barakah that Allah puts in that, there's going to be so much more. And it's always those fears that shaitan is planting those ideas in your head.
Yes.
It's always overthinking these things. When subhanallah, when you actually do that, subhanallah, there's a lot of barakah down the line. You just have to put your trust in Allah. Try your best, inshallah.
Mashallah. Amazing.
This one last thing, if you don't mind me sharing this.
Sure.
This is a conversation I've been having with the people in the industry as well, right? And they keep saying this aspect of customers own the business and customers decide whether you succeed or not. And when I started reflecting upon the things Islam teaches us, I realized no, that is not the case. We don't like we mentioned, we're not the reason for Islam to succeed. Islam will succeed no matter what. So it's the principles that can stay like intact no matter what time it is and what who you face and what society you are in. If you stick to your principles and not compromise it no matter what, then you're not being a people pleaser, rather you're being a leader, right? A leader also understands the people, but a people also, he does not understand the people necessarily. He just sees at face value and just wants to do what everyone says and expects him to do. But what a leader does is that leader analyzes and understands the situation, and we see that what the Prophet ﷺ does, right? And deals with each individual based on what is important to them and what they need the most and so on. So leader acts based on understanding that goes with empathy, right? And not just empathy alone without leadership. So I just wanted to mention that as a side note. Is something that I've been discussing with them in the field, the people, and they actually started agreeing. They're like, okay, that's an interesting thing, I guess people don't really own the business,
Mashallah. Something crossed my mind as well, if you don't mind me adding just one last point on this one, as you were describing this, right? There's a hadith by Aisha who describes that the character of the Prophet ﷺ was the Quran. So, that it's interesting, like the character, what you see outside, it's represented by the teachings of this book. So when you were describing this, so I was just thinking across my mind, like if let's say you don't know anything about Muslims, you don't know anything about how Muslims behave and so on and so forth. You just read the Quran, and then you read about the characteristics which Allah wants us to be. And in your mind, you will create this sort of a brand on how a Muslim behaves, and you're like, MashaAllah, this will be the best people in the world, So, so that kind of reminds us, like, wow, we got a lot to live up to, we've got a lot to improve on in ourselves. And because Allah has already prescribed this perfect brand for us, and because as you were describing this as well, a lot of when you don't have this kind of furqan, this very clear-cut guidance on what's right and what's wrong, it's kind of objective morality. That's what they call it in philosophy, right? If you don't have this objective morality, you kind of just teach stuff and you don't really know what's right and what's wrong. It's just based on opinions, and you just kind of this like, oh, customer owns the business. Yeah, I guess it's true, the kind of thing. So you don't really know where to draw the line. So mashallah, that just really crossed my mind.
Mashallah. Amazing stuff. Okay, mashallah. Jazakumullah khairan again, Brother Faraz, for joining us. May Allah grant you success in all your endeavors, and may Allah make it easy for you to finish your latest project, the book, and also may Allah grant success to you in your branding endeavors and whatever you may decide to go into, inshallah. And just to close, we always like to ask this question to our guests to complete this particular sentence. So in your own words, the key to barakah is?
Intention and consistency.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Intention and consistency. Okay, jazakumullah khairan, barakallah feek. So alhamdulillah. Yeah, thanks for coming down again and spending some time with us this morning. May Allah reward you, and may Allah grant benefit in what we are discussing.
Ameen.
Ameen.
Okay, so we close the session, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.